What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck did I just watch? You are listening to What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for joining us, and here's our latest episode. Oh, good evening, good morning, whatever you're doing right now, and welcome back to another episode of What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? And we have a couple of special guests. So Randy just can't get enough of us after he left us, so he's back again. And of course, we got Dirk Manning, our favorite horror comic writer, and we'll have him talk later about his project that is on Kickstarter right now because it's really exciting. And the pick for this episode is Randy and Dirk's fault, and it's Dog Soldiers. And so yeah, spoiler, in case you've never watched this before, we basically tell you everything that's happening in the movie. So if you want to watch it, and I'm sorry if you do, don't watch this first because we will tell you the whole plot and everything that happens in it.
Unless you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you like to know in advance, then, watch this first and then go see what the hell we were talking about. But yeah, does anybody want to give a plot summary of the movie?
Well, can I offer a preface to what led to this moment in regards to, because
justify your actions. That's fine.
Yeah. So allow me to present my case before the court of public opinion on this. As Jenny said, I have and I'm not going to get into details now, but I'm running a Kickstarter right now for a werewolf graphic novel called Homestead that you can check out at homesteadcomic.com. And I've been waiting to come back on ever since we did the last episode when we had an amazing talk about People Under the Stairs, right? Still waiting for the remake, Jordan Peele, but I know we'll get there. So we were talking about, oh my gosh, so we should do a werewolf movie, and then I can, cross promote, Homestead on Kickstarter. And we were talking about werewolf movies, and I think it was Jenny. I think you're the one that brought up the fact that like bad werewolf movies and Dog Soldiers came up, and we were like, a couple of us like, what? Dog Soldiers is great. Yeah. How can that be on a bad movie list? It's Dog Soldiers. It's classic. Like, it's cited as one of the most definitive modern werewolf movies, and we talked about a couple other movies, stuff like that. But then, kind of was like, well, I was like, man, I haven't seen Dog Soldiers in years. I would love to see it again. And here we are.
Yeah.
And here we are. And it is, I guess, the big picture of Dog Soldiers, and what makes, I think, the movie so awesome in theory and in concept is it's special forces versus werewolves.
Yeah.
See Jenny's background is perfect. And the werewolves are like big, tall, massive werewolves, and they're savage, and apparently they can manipulate the laws of physics when it comes to blood and all this stuff. They're afraid of cameras, but we'll get into all that as we go. But
and border collies, but that's a whole
and
other
border
story.
collie, yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a sword laying around, that may not be as effective as you think. But
a letter opener could be. Sorry.
It's silver.
And the thing is, like, a week or so before we talked, I was recommending Dog Soldiers to a buddy of mine who's looking for good werewolf movies. Now, mind you, I haven't seen the movie in probably close to 20 years. I mean, what year did it come out? Was it 2002?
Two.
Yeah, so it was probably close to 20 years I've seen it. But I was like, oh my gosh, there's Late Phases, which is really good, and of course, Dog Soldiers is a classic. And I was enthusiastically recommending this movie, and now I just watched it with a fresh pair of eyes for the first time in about 20 years, and help me, friends.
No, I feel the same way. I was also on board with it, and it's probably been about 10 years, maybe even a little bit more since I've seen it. But I remembered fondly because I thought for the time period, the werewolves looked really good.
Yes.
The story is very basic, but it's got some solid actors in it who later become pretty big deals. Kevin McKidd, he's on I think the 22nd season of Grey's Anatomy or whatever it is now, he was also in HBO's Rome. I mean, he's a great actor. I think the guy that played Stannis Baratheon in Game of Thrones was in this too.
Yep.
And another British actor whose name escapes me at the moment, but you would recognize him if you saw him. So I was like,
Yeah,
sorry,
Anna
good.
Karenina or something like that, or whatever it
Yeah.
was. It's been in a bunch of
Yes.
comedy
So
stuff.
there's some great actors, and the premise is really good. Again,
Yes.
it's a group of special forces soldiers trapped in the Scottish Highlands, and they're being attacked by giant werewolves, and they got to eliminate them. And it's an amazing idea. It's short, sweet. There's a bunch of problems with the movie, though. Huge plot holes. Uh, some of the scenes drag. You're right, Dirk. The camera's cut away from the special effects, which because the werewolves look so good. I feel like if they had somebody of a little quality on this, it's a low budget movie, but it can't be that low. They could have done a little animatronics and maybe made them, a little bit more imposing when they're attacking. They just look like a
Yeah.
guy in a suit attacking somebody, which didn't really cut it in this day and age.
Even you saying attacking, I think oversells it. Like
Yeah,
when you look at like online, like the stills, you see like the classic shot of like this big, tall, lanky werewolf, like hovering over the guy, getting ready to like take him out. And going back and watching it,
There's
I
very
mean,
little of that.
yeah,
it's like you see the werewolves for like literally a second at a time until one scene towards the end when you see all the busts, like the animatronic busts or like the
yeah.
masks of the wolves, like literally like from like the chin up, just so they can like show the heads only, basically. I mean, there's very little real werewolf stuff, and I was
So,
just
and this is interesting too. So, like one of the points of trivia was that they used dancers instead of stunts people for the werewolves because they wanted to show and illustrate a grace of movement.
Mhm.
But you don't see it because they don't really track the werewolves moving at all. And so
Yeah.
you like the whole point of what they did is completely lost because almost every scene you see them, they're still or they're just swiping hands. You don't see much grace of movement. You don't see much movement at all. And I like how they went with practical effects. John Paul, you pointed this out as well. Um, and so a lot of it was like so the dancers, the werewolf dancers, were on stilts, and that probably made the movement maybe not as graceful for the dancers. And so it just, yeah, it didn't play as well as it should have with that. And again, yeah, so I had never remembered this movie fondly, and I still don't really enjoy it. I remember being bored and just not getting engaged in it the first time I watched it, and that's what happened on these rewatches that I did for the show. But I will say this, it's funny. Like my initial knee-jerk reaction is I hate this movie. When I think about it afterwards, I don't hate it and I find things of value in it, but I still think it's they didn't do a good enough job to make it good. It's still bad. It's still not enjoyable to watch. It's almost agonizing, but it's one of those things where you go through an experience and it was terrible at the time, but when you think about it, you kind of remember it a little fondly for some strange reason.
Yeah.
Allow me to be the negative one in this whole bunch.
Oh my, the
Oh, as opposed to those
negative.
positive ones.
Yeah,
Oh, you
we were
guys are
just
so positive.
yeah.
Okay, so first of all, yes, I rewatched this, and I rewatched it recently. I also rewatched it about like what 5 months ago because I have an addiction to physical media. I have a problem. Every time I think there's going to be a great movie that would be great on 4K, I buy it. And I bought this movie
on
and I
4K.
watched it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on 4K.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a German import, mind you. Okay. So not even the stubborn director, which I'll get into because this director was very stubborn, um, decided because he if you want to talk to the director, he's a great director to talk to on Facebook because he'll answer your questions right away. He's loves his fans, backs this movie like, anything else in the world that he's ever done.
So it's Neil Marshall
Um,
for those of you who don't know, because
Yeah.
yeah.
not all of us are hip as John Paul. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
And like
sorry.
the descent.
So I watched this, right? And
Yep.
I, like everybody, remember this being a great movie.
No, I never
The
remembered
first
this great
time.
movie. Don't blame me for that.
Well, okay. Being a good werewolf movie. Let's say that, okay? First
I
half
remembered
hour.
that.
The
I
first half
remembered
hour
it
of
that
this
way.
movie is very, very slow and very, very boring. And so I said, "Oh wait, there's commentary." So I turned the commentary on and I listened to this wonderful stubborn director. And he talks about how that's all he wanted. He wanted to make sure that he used practical effects, that there was no CGI in this movie, that these dancers got showcased in this movie. And I'm watching this going, what are you talking about? You didn't showcase these dancers at all. What, that they can be on stilts and be, you know, he said like their feet were bleeding and that was awesome. And I'm like thinking, so basically you
Worse, they
tortured your
torture themselves
actors.
for no reason.
Exactly. And I'm watching, listening to this, and this guy's like talking about like how they're so great for their crafts and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, all you decided to do is torture your actors. And then through watching it and listening, I didn't realize this. So when this movie first came out, they had a problem with getting a distribution right.
Mhm.
So they couldn't distribute it to anybody. So they actually found one source in America to distribute it. It was the Sci-Fi Channel. So it was a quote unquote sci-fi original movie, which it was not.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a higher budget than anything sci-fi had ever put out. Which, okay,
Actually, I
on
believe
the
that's the
sci-fi,
first time I ever saw this movie was on the
and
original
again,
Sci-Fi.
I think that's
channel.
why we get this fond memory of this movie,
Not
because
me.
it's like, well, it's better than anything sci-fi usually puts out. Like,
No, I thought it
you
was
know,
on par with what Sci-Fi put out at the time.
It
But
was
I
a
mean,
higher
it's not like
budget than Man
More
of
boring.
Steel, right, Jean-Paul?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, okay, the effects are really cool, but
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I understand, but half this movie very dark. Even in 4K, you're just like,
Visually dark, to be
wow.
clear, not like dark humor. We're a
Visually,
fan of that.
yeah,
Right.
no, yeah, sorry, you're right. Visually dark. So you're just like, I can't see anything. And just random like stuff that he just goes on in this commentary, and I'm just like, it sounds like you really enjoyed torturing your actors. So much so that the lead actor, Mr. Grazianimi, I forget his name, what's his name?
Kevin McKidd.
Kevin McKidd, the first week hurt himself and broke his ribs while filming this movie.
Oh.
He
And
decided
didn't
not
want to tell
say,
well. Or, yeah,
and didn't
sorry.
want to say anything
Because he didn't
because
want to
he
get
thought
fired.
he was going to get fired
And he did, though.
from this role.
He did get fired from the role. They had to rehire him because they couldn't get anybody else in that they wanted in.
Exactly. So yeah. Now the interesting things are like that I found or come more behind the scenes. Like, we could have had Simon Pegg in this movie. That would have been
Jason
interesting.
Statham.
Jason Statham.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Statham
Yeah.
was actually going to do it, but then he ended up doing Ghost of Mars instead. I don't know if he had like a contractual obligation already with it, but
Which
he
is a
was
great movie.
on track to do Dog Soldiers, and then
Which is
he
not a
couldn't.
great movie.
Yeah.
John
So-
Carpenter's Ghost of Mars.
Yeah.
No,
I will
it's
say
terrible.
this, that I love Ghost of Mars, but character-wise, like I think the better acting role would have been this movie, even though this movie sucked, because the character he played in Ghost of Mars, there's not a lot there.
Was he going to be the bad guy in this movie, or was he going to be the hero?
I think he was supposed to be the hero. He was supposed to have
The
the kid's
lead,
role.
the hero, yeah.
Yeah,
Cooper.
the main guy. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, just to say that, but
yeah, and I think John Paul, you made a great point too about how dark this movie is, like visually. That was one of the things. It's like, one, we talk about the dancer aspect of the movie. The most movement you see out of the werewolves is them literally ducking back out of a window, or occasionally a real quick like them dipping by real fast. But nothing to the degree of any elegance, which would have told me that, oh, these are dancers. Usually, the most, again, aside from the occasional them darting past the camera real quick, the thing I remember most about movement is them falling out of windows.
Yeah.
Like dipping in, dipping out, dipping in, dipping out. And it's dark, and all the cuts are so wick, And it's like being a comic guy, watching the first half of this movie, I was like, man, this movie is like a not like if a Garth Ennis comic wasn't good. And I started to realize it was almost shot like a comic book in the sense that like scene, like panel, and then
Right.
even when you get to the bits where like the blood, it's like the guy was killed hours before, but the blood is still dripping.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, what is like, what? Like that's not how this works. This should be coagulated, which I know is a very common oopsie in horror movies, but there was just all these scenes that, or can we get to the flying cow?
Please.
Go
You
ahead. Yeah.
know, the bit in the movie where a cow comes, a vivisected cow comes flying out of the air, lands in the camp of our heroes, and they're not at all concerned about where it came from till the next morning.
Yeah.
But they were just so. It seems like, and again, I'm not Marshall can't speak for him, but it seems like he was just so infatuated with the idea of, "Oh, we're gonna drop a mutilated cow on him." I'm sorry, but if I came across a mutilated cow in the middle of the night, I'm going to be concerned. Let alone something throwing a cow lands on my feet and they're like, "Oh, well, this is pretty weird. We should probably." I don't even think they say they're going to deal with it in the morning. I think
Right.
that the next morning they like start looking. I mean, it was just like,
Yeah,
God,
well,
just
and that's one of the
like you said, like
issues.
potholes you drive a
Sorry to
truck
interrupt.
through.
On that same note, like, so yeah, they lob it over. It was like a jump scare for the sake of a jump scare because that's how unconcerned they were about it. But then the next day, when they do decide to track it down and see where like it was, then suddenly Wells, the sergeant, wants to track back the blood trail and see why it was there. But
Yeah,
there was no curiosity during the night. There was no like, oh, this is we better be double on the lookout, or yeah, maybe we should report it back because this is kind of freaky and weird. They're more like, oh, well, no, something just, one of its natural predators did this and then I guess lobbed it over the cliff. Fell
right.
over
And
the
they
cliff.
even they even mentioned that it got like ripped apart or eaten somehow or something like that. And it was just
Right.
like, well, all right, let's go to bed, everybody.
Sleep tight.
I I have a problem with the fact that towards the end of the movie they get into this cabin, and they find that sword, and they've used bullets a million times at this point. Nobody's fixed that sword up till way later. Like nobody else goes, hey, let's try this sword that's laying here and see if
Yeah,
that might do something. No, let's use all of our ammo first. Like
right.
I'm like, I don't know a whole lot. Even if I was in the military at some point, I'm in this situation. Werewolves are coming after me. I run into a cabin that's got a sword. I might try the sword. I might go, hey guys, you guys ever seen a werewolf movie? Like
Well, yeah. It just,
Oh,
yeah. I
and
don't
their
know. As far,
understanding of 3 to 5 round bursts hurt my head a lot. Let me put it that way. Clearly, they
yeah,
couldn't count. Sorry.
right,
yeah,
right, right. That too. And then, but instead, instead they have the letter opener, right? Instead, it's just
right.
like a. I try. A lot of times in movies, you see like Hollywood logic, right? It's like, why are they running upstairs? Because you need to do the cool balcony shot or whatever. And watching it, and then even in retrospect, I was trying to somehow connect a thread of even convoluted internal logic to why they were making the decisions they made. And it just again, it kept coming back to like disjointed comic panels, like, oh, here's this scene, or here's this scene, or I mean,
Right.
and no pun intended, I started howling with laughter when they're fending off the werewolves with the camera flash.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's yeah.
I don't know, did they say anything in the commentary like was that meant to be funny, or I mean,
It's the what he said, if I remember right, was because of them running into the cabin. He wanted to pay homage to Evil Dead. So all of those scenes are quote unquote paying homage to Evil Dead. You go into the cabin, you see the sword instead of the chainsaw, you see the sword, and all the crazy shit that happens. That's essentially Evil Dead. But I'm like, it's a terrible Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
right,
seen I've seen Korean terrible spoofs of Evil Dead that were better than that.
right. I mean, it,
It,
it
it just
reminded me more of Poor Man's Night of the Living Dead in a way,
oh
and
yeah,
then
maybe.
Yeah.
and then the werewolves are attacking until they're not,
And
right?
they had no lore, like no
Yeah,
story built around it. Like they didn't find anything that moved that story forward. Like in the cabin, why has the guy got the sword? Don't they shouldn't they have some more, some stuff written down? I've been fighting these things. Here's some exposition. Nothing, just continuously doing this and we don't know why they're attacking them, like just because they're hungry. I mean, like You
Right.
would think some of these
There's a
stories have
lot of
like they're
things
trying
they
to.
put
Because
in
they
there.
were
Sorry, Randy,
dog
they put in there
soldiers.
trying
Yeah,
to. They like so when I was thinking about this after the fact, I was like, this is so convoluted because yeah, so the family was supposed to be a werewolf family.
yeah,
Um, Originally you just think, okay, so they changed during the full moon, but then you
Mhm.
see at the end the Megan character just changed at will.
Yeah.
So that pretty much implies that they have been just changing at will and choosing to do it. They were clearly cannibals when they were not werewolves because that was the whole meat locker in the basement kind of thing. And then
yeah,
like that finally made sense when the Megan character was like, you can't just help yourself. I think she was trying to stop the other people from eating human flesh.
yeah.
So,
Right. But
but
then,
you know, I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
like,
all these things that in retro you're like, okay, maybe, but yeah, not a good lore. And then she even throws in stuff that doesn't make sense. She's like, you know, werewolves have a pack, and the alpha male is the young single male. I'm like, what the fuck kind of?
Yeah, I was like, how do you know that?
And
Like
that
where,
doesn't
like,
even
yeah,
track
that's
no,
in
no
look
any
at
lore
other.
I've ever read.
my werewolf handbook. Now that I've been converted into one of the lycanthropes, let's see here. Oh yes, the single alpha
Yeah,
male.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, and even your point, Jay, like they it was like I thought for a second maybe they're gonna go some sort of Wendigo werewolf type route. No,
yeah,
no, not it just no logic to any of this. And again, I don't like bashing anything, especially something that I have such fond memories of. But looking back, I'm like mortified about this. I'm like, how did I not see this the first time? And I think John Paul, you made the great point, about how when this came out on Sci-Fi Network, it's like, what did we have then? Like Mansquito and stuff like that. These
yeah,
exceptionally bad but comically bad horror movies. Then you kind of like this seems like the tallest midget, right? It's like a giant in comparison because it
hmm
had a little bit of a budget and it had that super fast cuts that were just kind of the thing in the early 90s. But I'm not too proud to say looking back, I'm like I can't believe that I liked this as much as I did. And I'm trying to pull things out of it that I liked. And like I liked the general concept of the big tall werewolves.
yeah.
Um I
Oh,
like
the
the
acting was good.
concept.
The acting was pretty
Uh,
decent in parts. I like the
yeah.
cabin setting. I always like a cabin setting though. I'm kind of a sucker for that.
We got
Cabin in
hosed,
the
Davey. We got
yeah,
I like that
hosed.
they predicted their own deaths, like how they were going to die. Did you
Oh
catch
yeah.
that?
yeah,
That was funny. Like what is your worst fear? Man's capacity for self-destruction. Then he ends up running and impaling himself on a branch that's sticking out.
Right.
Um,
yeah,
Well,
things like that. I
it
thought that was
seems
pretty
like
funny.
high school witty, right? It's like
yeah.
they're all going to like talk about the thing that destroys them, and it's like really bad foreshadowing. And here's the other thing: was I the only one that was just taken aback at the groan-worthy quips throughout this film?
No, I also was like, what the hell? Yeah,
There is no spoon. The
Yeah,
yeah,
or
random homage to the Matrix.
yeah, or the bit about the pussy. I just all of it was just like, oh my god, and they all seem to hold them for a second afterwards, like, yeah, blah blah blah.
yeah.
Then they go on, right? It's like you're like waiting for like laughter in the audience or something else. Like, ooh, buddy.
You want to be part of this group? You got to kill this dog, man. Like, what?
Oh, yeah. It's
You
like
can't
we
kill a
need to
dog. You
establish
can't kill
this
a
guy's
man.
totally evil, right?
Yeah, right.
Him and his
Like
entire squad. You have to like make
you
that clear.
can't
Yeah,
kill a
that
dog. You can't kill a man. What are you talking about? That's our job. Like they trained us to do this, and now I've got to kill a puppy because you're weird about it. I don't like.
Hey,
Like
Hey,
no,
it
no,
they
made no
are
sense.
dog soldiers. Did you not see their little patch? They were
Yeah, I got it.
dog
No, I
soldiers.
got it. Yeah.
no, but I also thought that was funny too. Like anybody who knows anything knows that most people can kill a man but won't kill a pet. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
right. It was,
I'd
yeah,
have a hard
and
time like killing a dog that was coming at me than killing a man that comes at me. No problem. I'll shoot
Even
a
Lee,
guy
even Lee
anytime.
Harvey Oswald had a dog. You know what I'm saying?
well, right,
Not
and
too
it's like
much.
the term in professional wrestling, like cheap heat is like, how do we establish that this guy is bad and someday you will want to see him die? Then of course the guy that kills the dog becomes the werewolf, right? So now
Yeah.
it's just like,
Who
oh,
is taken down by
Yeah.
a dog when he's in werewolf form?
right, and then
And
taken
Karma.
down by a dog, right? And it's just like,
And I think it's good that we talk about Neil Marshall, later on. So this is one of his earliest movies, and then
I think it
later
was
on
his
he
first
becomes
feature
a
length
pretty
film.
good. Yeah, he becomes a really good director later. Good. I won't say really. He becomes a good director.
Better director.
Better, yeah, director. But
Better
yeah,
is the word you're looking for.
because I see in this a lot of shots that are in the Descent, but they're way better. They're way better framed and paced. Like you were saying, Dirk, the quicker cuts are in the Descent, but they linger just a little, the perfect amount of time, So yeah, he's clearly a better director later. So we'll give him a little leeway on that, too.
Well, yeah, we all start somewhere, and
Yeah.
what took me back more than anything, this is not a movie I would be so critical of. Oh, and we're gonna get our dog commentary. Well done, Jack. Well done.
Yeah.
Cameo. There you go.
Yeah. What took me back was twofold. One, how fondly I remember this movie and how poorly, at least to me and to all of us, it sounds like, except for Jenny was on the tip at the beginning.
Yeah.
But like you and me, especially Randall, I think we have to take the heat on this one about how poorly it aged for us.
Yeah.
The fact that this movie still has such a strong level of nostalgia to the point that what's that new movie he just produced or something, The Lair, and they advertised made by Neil Marshall, not from the December, from Dog Soldiers, right?
Yeah.
The fact that this movie still gets such traction. And again, a week before we talked, I was like recommended to a buddy of mine. I'm like, oh, great werewolf movies, late phases, Dog Soldiers. For some that are
The
more like
Howling.
right, The Howling.
But you're right. There's a cult following built around this movie because I have friends in the horror community who regard this as they have it on VHS. They regard it as like one of their prized possessions or DVD, and I was always like, yeah, that's a great movie, good call. And now I'm like John Paul, he's got it on 4K, sucker.
There's a.
I mean, yeah, but
yeah.
But along with the commentary, and this is what blew my mind, was the idea for what the sequel was going to be. You guys ready for this?
I heard this at one point, but I remember reading it somewhere.
All right. So the idea for the sequel was going to take it out of the cabin and bring it into an insane asylum.
Cooper survives, and they lock him up.
Yeah.
So,
just imagine.
Too, by the way.
I mean, when I heard this, I go, "What the fuck did he just say?" And I rewound it, and he said that, and I'm like, "What?"
So was it going to be called Dog Patience?
I forget what the
dog flew over the
title.
Cuckoo's Nest. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm like, I mean, again, I don't mean to dog on this director, but I'm gonna dog on this director because this idea of let's just take it out of the woods and out of anything that would remotely be scary and bring it into an insane asylum.
Hold on. Again, I want to be fair. They did seed that at the end of the first one. When you get the newspaper clipping, werewolves in my platoon, right? They're making fun of them in the newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
They were setting it up for sure.
They're setting it up. And then, of course, you got the idea that if you put... I'm trying to say with a straight face. All right. Hold on. All right. Okay.
Yep.
So you have the soldier, and now he's in the insane asylum. I'm trying to pretend I'm pitching this like you as like Hollywood.
There you go.
Okay. So after the events of Dog Soldier, everyone thinks he's crazy and that he killed his platoon, so they put him in an insane asylum. And somehow some other cousin werewolf or something sneaks into the insane asylum, or perhaps like this is like the crazy cousin that got caught.
It was going to be the guy from the beginning of the movie.
The camper.
That was the camper from the beginning of the movie.
So he's down in an insane asylum as a werewolf?
As a werewolf.
Well, and then presumably the leader of Dog Soldiers was in the asylum with him.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So now it's like your Jaws motif or any horror movie. Like, no, the monster's real and it's in here with us. The shark is in the water.
Right, right. One
So
flew over the cuckoo's nest.
right. So now you have the one guy who knows the werewolf is real, locked in the insane asylum with a real werewolf. I think I've seen that like a million other ways.
I like it. Let's do it. Here's $10 million.
Yeah, here. Thank you, Randall. Thank you. I mean,
$10 million.
I I'm glad he moved on to do other things and made other movies. And again, The Descent. For a
Yeah, The
minute there,
Descent is one of the greatest horror movies in terms of like fear and freaking people out. Yeah.
yeah, but then I was
But
like,
this,
do I want to go back and watch The Descent? Am I gonna get dog soldiered?
no, you're not. You're not.
Okay,
Yeah, so I watched it not too long ago, about a
As
year
long
ago.
as you watch
It
the
still holds
director's
up.
cut.
The director's cut,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't. The American cut is the worst cut of The Descent.
Yeah.
Just to recommend that.
No,
And
I appreciate that.
that sequel's okay. I don't know. Did he do the sequel, Jean Paul?
He did not do the sequel. The sequel was a
Yeah.
cash grab by Lionsgate.
Yeah, it's just okay, and I wouldn't recommend watching that one again. But the first one still holds up.
Yeah, I don't know if I've watched the director's cut of The Descent, to be honest with you. I feel like my horror geek cred is waiting a little bit. I don't know if I ever saw the director's cut. I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's the only one I would watch. And I don't know where can you stream it? Do you know, John Paul, off the top of your head?
Maybe Amazon might have it.
Okay.
Maybe.
Interesting. Yeah, because now I'm curious. I mean, I love the one I saw was, of course, great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So
no. Go ahead.
So one of the things that really bugged me about it is like, okay, so they all see the werewolves when they're being attacked. Like they saw them, or at least a
Presumably,
couple of
right?
them saw them at the beginning when, Bruce impaled himself on the tree and Wells he was partially eviscerated. They saw Cooper and the other guy saw him when they went back out to the Land Rover to try to get it started up. And yet when they go back in and they ask what it is and Megan tells them it's werewolves, they argue with her. Like, no, it can't be werewolves. Like, did you not fucking see them? Because I'm really confused why this is a disbelief moment at this point.
Yeah.
It made no sense. Like, what level of like, I'll give you like one person might be in shock and be like, no, not that. But the fact that the whole platoon was basically arguing with her that it's not werewolves was weird.
Right.
Like, what did
To
they
be
think
fair,
it was?
that scene does remind me of From Dusk Till Dawn, where it's like those were fucking vampires. There were
Yeah.
vampires.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody really argues that because the thing with George Clooney is like we can all agree that these are fucking vampires and
Fucking
everybody
vampires.
right.
But this is not what happens in this movie. Nobody's agreeing with her that they're werewolves. They're arguing with her.
Yeah, and I mean, and you had the strong Predator vibes too, right? Even some of the shots in there were very Predator-esque.
Yeah.
The forest and all this stuff, and then of course you had. But it's interesting. I keep coming back to Jean Paul. You mentioned about like his Evil Dead because watching it, you get the Evil Dead cam, the werewolf cam, and I've been thinking about that more and more since you said it, and I'm almost like now like retconning the movie in my mind through the idea that someone's like first film and they're making an Evil Dead homage with werewolves. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But that still does not at this moment let it live to
Off
the
the hook.
height, the stature I've held it in my mind. I have this great book called Horror Movie Freaks, and it talks about all these, up to that point in the time the book is published, some of the greatest horror films everyone has to see. And of course, Dog Soldiers is in there. And again, like I keep coming back, I recommended it. I'm like confessing like in a church, like
Yeah.
I recommended it a week prior. I'm sorry.
Say five Martin Scorsese's and
Right.
drink your water.
Allow me to be the asshole because I believe in the group chat I suggested another terrible werewolf movie.
Yeah, but that
I'm
was
again Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I watched the first 5 minutes of it. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was howling with laughter. But I'm like, well, no, because Dog Soldier is going to be like, could be cool, man. I get to see that. I've been wanting a reason to watch this movie again. And
yeah. So I'm going to go on a limb and say I'm probably not going to watch this one again for a long time. So
You got Hose, Davey. you
Yeah.
ghost.
Yeah, there's all kinds of movies I want to see, and I've now seen Dog Soldiers, I think, one too many times. I
Right.
think I'm glad I watched it because it did unravel perhaps some non-justified nostalgia for this movie, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if I could recommend Dog Soldiers to someone for the first time, except for the fact I think like you said, Paul, about how okay, this is this guy's first film. It's basically like Evil Dead with werewolves, and but but the werewolves are dancers on stilts. Like Randall, like you said, it's like there's all kinds of these plot holes, all kinds of these problems with it.
Yeah.
You get like 30 seconds of great practical shots of the werewolves towards the end, but then you also get a part where a werewolf, rather than eviscerating someone, has a sword sticking out of its chest and is like sword blade fellatiating the person to kill them, and just
Yeah.
to get the shot of like the sword scraping across the teeth. I don't even know if I can say this is a movie of excess because I just I
It's a good idea that's executed completely poorly. That's what I would say, you know.
yeah, because the
But
concept's great. So
yeah.
that begs the question then for all of you, I think, could there be or should there be a high budget remake of Dog Soldiers?
I could get
I
behind that. Yeah.
I could, but the problem is usually when it happens, they just like find everything that was bad about it and they spend the money on that to redo it, and it still is
Yeah.
bad. Like it's been very rare where I've watched a remake and I thought, okay, this is good. This is worthy. It's not better than the original, but this adds
Right.
value. And I feel like if they remade it, whoever does it will probably keep dragging out the beginning and make it more boring, will, do dancers on stilts and not film them either. Or do
No,
CGI dancers.
I would probably hope that they would take that part out and just make the werewolves. But they'd probably make them terrible CGI,
Yeah,
It would be a
nowadays.
CGI mess.
it
Let's be
would. It would be
honest.
awful.
Yeah.
Did any of you see the watch? And I'm sure you probably did, but if you didn't, I don't mean to pull anybody's punk card in horror. The old Fox TV show Werewolf,
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes.
right?
It's my favorite from like my favorite like werewolf story ever. Like
Yes,
I
I
love
kept.
yeah.
I think part of me transposed my love of that onto this with the idea of the big werewolves. But like, I
Yeah.
would love to see like a practical effect, cleaner shot, tighten up the story a little bit,
Yeah.
and have the big bulky werewolves, the practical effects. Because yes, I loved the Fox Werewolf series. Again, I went back
Yeah.
and watched that about 8 years ago or so, and it's cheesy, but it's still fun, right? That's just
It's still
incredible
great.
TV show with a werewolf, but it's one of my favorite werewolves.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pedigree.
Mhm.
I'm telling you
I'll
that
say,
right there. When
Randy,
I was a
go ahead and tell your story.
well, I'm just saying I bought it, or you want me to tell them where I bought it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I bought it. So I bought the Werewolf TV series on DVD at one of the horror conventions.
Right,
That's
Bootleg.
basically just VHS bootlegs put
right.
on DVD.
Commercials and
But
all.
yeah, yep, commercials and everything,
Yep,
dude, and
yep.
and even the original soundtrack, because that's what they're having problems with. Why they
Yes.
don't have a Blu-ray is because of that. So it's even got the original songs in the pilot episode, which they're fighting over. But I got to say, the hand pentagram thing. When I was a kid, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old when that show was first out. That thing freaked me out every time it happened, and to this day, it's seared in my brain. It's one of the coolest ideas
Yes.
for a werewolf change. I mean, it not only it symbolizes it can show this guy's a werewolf, right? But the transformation's about to start. It gives you that second of pause, like it's bleeding. I've got this amount of time, It
Yep.
sets the thing in motion.
And
And
it's a nice homage back to the Wolfman.
exactly,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, so it's got its roots in the original idea. But I'm telling you, man, I think it was like late 80s when that came out, 89, 90.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, that was like top-notch practical effects with
Oh
the
yeah, dude.
different
Yeah, like
werewolf
singing.
restoration.
Was it even like 87 maybe?
I
It
can't
was
remember. Yeah.
it was early, but yeah, I mean, it was like that and Married with Children were like the two shows on like Fox. Like, holy crap, like these things like
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of television.
Way before X Files and all that. This was, and you're right, it was just the Incredible Hulk week to week. The werewolf would save people, which was crazy. But it had this amazing story too with the one eyed
Yeah, the
you
one
know,
eyed
boat
sailor.
captain, and
Yep,
who and the cop that's chasing him, with the
yep.
silver bullet. It's just a freaking great idea. Sorry, go ahead, John Paul. What's up? I can't see what
It
you're
is
doing.
80. It is 87.
He was
Okay.
showing
It
like,
was
yeah,
one
the
of
screen.
Well, can you put it
87
in
to
the
88.
camera?
One of the first TV shows on Fox
Yep.
when Fox was a new station. And yeah, I mean, even the werewolf in that show is so incredible.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I know we're getting sidetracked,
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry.
So
sorry. I didn't mean to
no,
yeah,
this
pull
is
us away
interesting though. Like, so
from
this has
Stilts.
triggered a memory on the remake tangent that we had. I don't remember the name of the movie, and I think it might have also been something I saw on Sci-Fi Channel, but this is recently, like in the last 5 years or so. And they said it in like Afghanistan, and it was kind of the opposite version, so that they had werewolf soldiers that were part of the platoon that did specific like tracking and hunting duty, and then
Yes.
another enemy soldier came into them. I cannot for the life of me even think of the name, but I
Was that
actually
in
thought that was pretty good.
it wasn't in Love, Death, and Robots, was it? Was it one of the shorts in that?
Maybe it was on
Let's see.
Netflix. It
It
might have been
sounds
that. It might have
familiar. I
been an
just can't.
episode in the
Yeah, I think
series.
it was
You
one of the
might be
episodes of
absolutely
Love,
right,
Death, and
Dirk.
Robots. Because I remember
Yeah.
I
And I
really
think it's excellent.
I think I really loved it, but I was mad it did not have robots in it. It was just
Yeah.
like they
I
used
had death in
werewolves
it and
as
love.
soldiers. They did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google it right
Well,
now.
I think one of
Yeah.
those shorts was about robots. They were left on Earth, and they
Well,
were
yeah, but
trying
this
to figure.
particular episode didn't have anything to do with
Oh
love.
yeah, yeah, no,
it's
yeah.
the
But
episode Shapeshifters. It
Okay.
is in Love, Death,
okay.
and Robots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now in retro, I think that basically was a reimagining of Dog Soldiers. And I think that was done pretty well. Personally,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah, I
that was a
remember I
pretty
liked
decent.
that. I like that whole series though. That every one of those are really good. But yeah,
Oh, they're
that's a
fantastic.
good one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
So to that point, if somebody went around that genre or went around with that kind of thought in mind, they could do an excellent remake of this. Or
yeah,
or
and
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, and remakes don't have to be terrible. I mean, Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite movies ever, but I think the remake's really good. Like Jenny said, it adds to the overall story and ups the ante. I think remakes can be good if they're in the right hands. So that was
Well,
my point.
yeah, and I think this demonstrates all the different ways that you can tell good werewolf stories, especially if you add a slight military aspect to that, or maybe, I don't know, a cowboy western Native American flair to it, for example.
There you go.
Tell us more about this. Tell
yes,
us
on
more.
that
Tell us
note,
more.
do elucidate.
Yes.
No, the cheap plug segment of the podcast now comes in. No,
Plug.
Yes.
yeah, no. Again, we watch Dog Soldiers because my new graphic novel Homestead is now on Kickstarter. Well, that's why like I'm like this like was able to slide back in with you guys for this. But it's when you talk about what we're talking about here is ultimately the diversity of werewolf stuff, and the weaponization of werewolves as a soldier is something that I explore in a way in my graphic novel Homestead, which is now on Kickstarter. You can go to Kickstarter, type in Homestead, or go to homesteadcomic.com. And it's a Native American Western werewolf story about two families, a family of settlers in 1868 North Dakota who are granted land as part of the Homestead Act, which belongs to the Sioux Lakota in North Dakota, and a kind of a radical medicine man from this Lakota tribe who tells one of the main warriors in the tribe, listen, we need to get those settlers out of here or they're going to destroy our way of life. And spoiler, but what happens is the medicine man Maka asks Akasita, the warrior, he says, how far are you willing to go to defend your family and our way of life? Are you willing to embrace the spirit of the wolf? right?
Nice.
And that's what starts this very heartfelt but also very visceral horror story. But it's interesting because talking about dog soldiers and talking about shapeshifters and things like that, I am realizing the little bit of that DNA in there about the idea of like the weaponization, or even in the TV show Werewolf, right back from 1987, how
Yeah.
he uses his werewolf powers for good sometimes, um, the weaponization of the werewolf and using that and embracing that the lycanthropy to uh, put forward your own agenda, and that's something we explore in Homestead as well, which people can get the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover edition of the comic. But I have to admit, when you look back at now TV shows like Werewolf, which was one of my, again, like you, Randy, one of my favorite things ever was that show,
Yeah.
right? And then even the DNA in there of things like Dog Soldiers, which despite now looking back at it is not as doesn't maybe hold up the way I thought it did. Homestead will hold up forever. This will be a book you will read, you will reread. You can get the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover edition of the book, and it will be wonderful. It'll live on your bookshelf forever, be reread often, as
To
many.
refresh my memory, you actually had an Indigenous consultant contribute to or oversee and overlook the project as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Homestead is a comic that I wanted to write for about most of my career. This actually started as a Nightmare World story. And it was just too big. And I was going to make it a love stories to die for story. It was too just it could add so much more to it. And so I've researched this story and put things together because Homestead is not a story of good guys versus bad guys. This isn't a cowboy and Indian story. This isn't a settlers bad, natives good story. It's about two families. It's about two cultures, and when they're kind of wedged together in a way that puts them in conflict. And I joke about this a lot, but like about I'm not Lakota, spoiler. I'm a middle-aged white guy from the Midwest. But when it got to the point when it was time to really write this story and bring it to its final form and do the final edits on it, along with the editor I have, um, I did reach out to someone that's now become a dear friend of mine, Rob Blackhawk, who's a proud member of this Lakota Nation, and he took the time with me to go through. He loved the story, so there wasn't a lot of changes to the story structure, but things like consulting on the language, consulting on the culture, making sure that the Lakota were represented properly. And like I said, I did a lot of research on this, and I use this example a lot. So those that have heard this before, I apologize. But one example is there's a scene in the book where one of the Lakota says to another one, "I love you." And Rao explained to me that the Lakota don't have they don't express that emotion by saying "I love you." They don't have the term "I love you" to express that level of devotion to someone. What they say is, "I will suffer for you."
Oh,
That makes
Right?
sense.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, man. And that became such a central theme of the book. But little things like that, I mean, no one would know the difference. And you could argue translation, right? If someone says to another character, "I love you," but that's not truly how the Lakota would represent it. They would say, I will suffer for you. And even little things like that, and like the paint colors worn by the different people at different times, and um, really made this a lot more of an authentic experience, not only for me to write, but now for people to read. Because again, the story is the same, but getting now that truly that, as you said, Jenny, that cultural representation, that accuracy into the story has made it that much more powerful and that much more emotionally investing. Because this is a horror story, right? This is your straight up Bernie Wrightson, Dog Soldiers, as three of the four of us here remembered it, action packed, visceral, violent horror, but there's a lot of heart to it as well. There's a lot of heart to this and things like that. And making sure that the language is represented, the culture is represented, how they would interact with each other, how they would say certain things, or how they would even hold themselves and compose themselves emotionally during different things. Do you celebrate? How do you No, I can't say. I don't want to give anything away, but happens in the story. But
Okay.
how people react in different situations. So yeah, Jenny, it became much more of an
Yeah.
authentic experience. That
Can you imagine if we had to use that term in our society, how less people would say that the term "I love you"? If you had to say, "I would suffer for you," I don't think I'd say that. It'd have to be somebody pretty close for me to say that. A lot. So I mean, that's
you're
a
I
you're
will say the
exactly
people
right.
who have said that
yeah.
they love me have caused me to suffer. I don't
No,
know
no,
that
they'll
that's the
suffer
same
for you.
thing.
You don't get to
Right,
suffer
right,
for
right. But will they
them.
suffer for you?
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
But that's different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I
that's
No,
might
it.
say that, Dirk. I'm going to hold that in my back pocket. I might use that on my next, dating adventure.
Right. Yeah,
I'll
that'll
be
be like the
like,
dating profile, right? It'll say, "I will
yeah,
suffer."
I will suffer for
Careful who
you.
you attract, though. You
sure,
might be
just make it
getting some.
meaningless.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. You might be
but
getting a very
that's
special type of suitor if you use that.
that's
But no, you're
unbelievably amazing, though. I've never heard that before. It's really cool. So,
I hadn't either. And going back to that too, one of the other things was there was a certain word I was using for the Lakota when we're talking about the settlers, and it was a pejorative. And Raul reads it and he goes, "Okay, man." He goes, "The story's great." He goes, "I love how you've represented the Lakota here. Everything's right. This is very respectful. This is good. This is authentic." And he goes, "But what's this word they keep saying?" And I said, "Well, isn't that like how Lakota would talk about a settler, a white person?" And we're on Zoom, and he starts laughing, and he goes, "That's not a word." And I'm like, I said to him, I said, "Look, first off, let me preface this by, I believe you. I believe you. This is not a word, right? I'm not questioning you." I said, "But I have to admit, I'm shocked because I don't want you to think I just like jumped into this, man. I've been like researching this for like 10, 15 years. I've been digging into this stuff and cross-referencing it all over the internet and stuff like that." And again, I've used this term a lot as well, but I love this. I heard in an interview, Alan Moore used the term, the comic book writer Alan Moore, the human centipidification of culture,
Mhm.
right? One person
Yeah.
takes it and then they eat it and regurgitate it right into the next person, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And what Rao said to me is, he goes, yeah, one person says it somewhere online, and next thing you know, it's on every website. That's the word. And then next thing you know, it's in books and it's in movies or whatever. And I said to him, I said, "I'm just shocked." I said, "How has no one gotten this right?" Because I mean, I cross-referenced all this stuff, like here's my references, like trying to like prove myself, prove my validity that I wasn't taking representing, that part of the culture for granted. And again, Rao said something very profound to me. He said, "Dirk," he goes, "No one cares." And it was like,
Yeah.
but that was it, and again, that was kind of like this theme of the book about how the US government in 1868 just says to veterans, "Yeah, just take some of that land out there. Just take some of that land." And the Lakota, they don't view ownership like the US government did, or like Westerners even do, right? You can't buy the land. It's everyone lives off the land. So in the story Homestead, which homesteadcomic.com will take you right to the Kickstarter. So they most of the Lakota are not actively against the settlers coming out there because we're going to live off the land. But Maka, the medicine man, he is very radical in his belief, but his belief is not unfounded. He's like, "This is going to cause destruction to our people," and which is what when he asks Akasita, "How far are you willing to go to protect our family, our tribe? Are you willing to embrace the spear of the wolf?" Right. And we talked in Dog Soldiers about how they never explained the werewolf mythos, right?
Mhm.
One of the things in Homestead is a lot of people associate Native American, a lot of horror buffs associate Native American werewolfism with skinwalkers. Skinwalkers is Southwest. That's not the Plains. That's not the Great Plains. That's not North Dakota. So again, I do a lot of research into like, what does this look like, and how would we bring werewolves into the Great Plains, or in the case of Dog Soldiers, how do you get werewolves in Scotland,
Yeah.
Scottish Isles, the Highlands? But exploring that, and again, the dialogue, and I love what you said, Randy. Like, how often would we express that sentiment if it was not just "I love you"? Because that's become very cheap, right? That's
Yes.
become very, very easy to say. And I do believe, tell your friends you love them. Tell your friends you love them often. Tell them you care about them. You know, that's important. Remind people. Times are tough. But that level of bond when you say to someone, and you mean it, I care about you enough. I will suffer for you.
Right.
That's intense. And that's just a level of intensity and a level of entwinement and bonding that I think we in modern society, we've lost track of that. Right? So that is the kind of stuff you'll get in Homestead. You know, again, it's very much Les Garner and I, the artist and co-creator on the book, talked about getting our Bernie on, get our Bernie Wrightson on. Have you ever read Cycle the Werewolf? You know, which became Silver Bullet, but the book with the Bernie Wrightson illustrations, Les really channels his Bernie Wrightson in this book. Right.
That's awesome.
But it's not a story about good guys and bad guys. It's not like Dog Soldiers where you have someone that kills dogs and then becomes a werewolf and the dog eats them. This is not that kind of book. This is not that kind of comic. This is about two families who are forced into conflict with each other and how far they're both willing to go to protect themselves and their family and their loved ones, and how much each family is willing to suffer to protect the other.
Now I know that you're working on this actively. It's, you're about to be putting in the next phase, but have you looked ahead? Is this something that you're thinking you might want to take like a sequel scenario, or is this going to be a standalone story?
Yeah, Homestead 2 takes place in an asylum.
That is fantastic.
Well done.
Yeah, well, who knew?
1910.
Homestead is, for all intents and purposes, a one and done graphic novel. It's interesting because I'm in a spot in my career where, like, Tales of Mystery, I just gave the artist the script for volume 6, right? We just did a Kickstarter for Hope volume 2. Nightmare World ran for 4 volumes and then a bonus book. It is important for me as well, even to bring in new readers, but also just to honor where the story's at. And like Rao and Les and Drina Joe and everybody involved in the book, Colin Judge and our colors were all like, you need to do more of this. I'm glad you feel that way. But this is the story.
Right.
This is the story. This is it. I would love to get in and do more with Rao, and maybe explore more. I think Native American culture is very underrepresented in horror, and I would love to help bring if I can do anything, I'll bring those voices forward or contribute to that mythology. This is something I put, about 10, 15 years of active research into to tell this story. Oh, if I would be the right one, to do another story like this, I would entertain that conversation. But Homestead is a one and done graphic novel. So if people have heard the name Dirk Manning in association with cool horror comics, like, oh, I don't want to get into mystery. There's all kinds of volumes of that. Or we did just put out the 20th anniversary edition of Nightmare World, which
nice.
First time I can get the whole thing in trade paperback.
Nice.
But this is, again, a big book. If you're not a nice one and done book, you get the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover, you get free shipping on any pledge level, and then again you can get stuff like the mini werewolf bust as one of the pledge levels. You can get the shirt of the cover. My favorite is always to give me everything. You get the book, the shirt, the werewolf mini bust. There's a pledge level you can get like a 13-inch statue, and the busts and the statues are also designed by Les Garner, who drew the book. He also does 3D modeling as well.
Oh, so that's really cool.
Yeah, but this is a one and done thing, a way to jump in, get it, check it out. If you like it, then you can go into more of my work from there. But this is, I don't like to spoil anything, but this is a one and done story, 100 pages, Homestead. There it is.
Gotcha.
Here you go.
When does the Kickstarter close?
Kickstarter closes April 1st. No fooling.
So I best get to editing this and get it out, huh?
Right. Right. But yeah, it ends on April 1st. We've unlocked, as of this taping, 6 stretch goals. We're closing on the 7th stretch goal. So anybody who backs for the hardcover edition of the book, any pledge level that includes the hardcover, you also get a book plate, a Kickstarter exclusive book plate, signed by me, signed by Les Garner, the artist, Signed by Rob Blackhawk, our Lakota creative consultant. Les is doing a remark sketch on them. You get a wraparound cover, a silver ribbon bookmark. We're about to unlock the silver gilded, the silver embossment on the cover. And then the next stretch goal after that, we'll be working towards the silver gilded pages on the whole book.
Nice.
And we'll go
Nice.
from there. We unlock more from there. We'll go from there. So
Right on. So get your
whatever you see on your pledge levels on the United States, that's what you pay to get it right to your door. And we're looking to get the book done. Well, the book is done. We're working on the final letters right now. My goal is to have it in people's hands within 100 days of the campaign ending. So
awesome, man.
yeah, which is what brought us to Dog Soldiers.
Yes.
So
Which is not indicative of the project. It's just
no,
indicative
but
of Randy and Dirk's poor taste in movies.
yeah, well, our poor nostalgia.
Yeah. They can't all be the Godfather, Jenny. Come on.
Right.
So this is what I think is particularly funny. Normally, if I like find something boring or don't like it, Randy loves the movie. Like it's just kind of like we're just opposite ends.
Yeah,
And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, he's wrong, I'm right. It's just like what he gets out of it, what I got two different things. And I was really surprised when Randy was like, yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah. This was my bad too. So I take ownership as well.
But at least we didn't
But
buy the
yeah.
book.
Yeah, at least I didn't buy the 4K. Way to go. Way to go, Jeff.
I mean, and that's the best way to wrap this episode up.
Yeah.
Don't buy the
Bye,
4K.
bye.
Oh,
But don't buy the 4K like I did. The German 4K.
actually,
What
how about
was
this?
the-
Don't spend any money on Dog Soldiers. Spend your money on Homestead on the Kickstarter.
There you
That's right.
go.
Where's the link again? One more time.
Yeah, you can go to Kickstarter and type in Homestead, or just go to Homestead Comic, all one word or two words put together, homesteadcomic.com. You can check out the campaign. Again, check out the pledge levels. What you see is what you pay. Shipped right to your door. Our intent is to have it everybody's doors within 100 days. And if you've been watching a whole podcast with us talking about werewolves and werewolves we loved and werewolf movies, then gosh darn it, this is the graphic novel for you. Whether you're familiar with my work or whether you're a first timer, homesteadcomic.com by April 1st, and you will get all that sweet Kickstarter exclusive hardcover goodness.
Awesome.
Sounds
With
good,
that,
man.
thanks, Dirk. Thanks, Randy. John Paul, you don't get thanks because you have no
Hey.
choice. And
I know.
thanks
I know.
for hanging in
but-
there with us.
I know,
Yeah.
but I do want to tease, we're going to the movies.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to the movies. So future episode, we get to collide many different worlds. It will be Girls Go Schools, The Bums Corner Coast to Coast, and us. Or me mainly. I don't know. And possibly if we can get Randy to come back. We're going to see Blood and Honey #2.
Oh yeah.
Because everybody
hate
loved
ourselves.
my take on Blood and Honey #1.
Yeah.
We get to see the sequel. This time, they got money backing it.
For
Yeah.
better or for worse.
Yeah.
For
It's
better or
for
for
worse.
worse.
Stay
Blood
tuned
and
for
Honey
that, I
2.
guess.
Well,
On that
I mean,
note,
yeah,
This has
well,
been a great
thank you
episode
very-
of
yeah,
What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? I want to thank all of our guests, my wonderful co-host, and all of you who enjoy our silliness, And now we just spoiled Dog Soldier for you, so you're welcome.
yep, and
Take care, guys.
go pledge on Dirk's Kickstarter. Have a good night.
You have been listening to
What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us again soon.